morning. Thank you for being here. The Metropolitan Area Religious Coalition of Cincinnati, or commonly known as MARC, welcomes our judicatory leaders, representatives, and the press. I'm Pat Coyle. I'm president of the MARC board. Today, MARC is convening a press conference of its judicatory leaders with the support of other faith-based organizations in Southwest Ohio. Today, we are speaking out for fairness in immigration policy. 16 judicatories make up MARC's Interfaith Coalition. By working together, the religious community feels it can accomplish more than working separately. The principles that we'll be presenting this morning are general statements and are a starting point for individuals, organizations, institutions, and government within our metropolitan region to frame a discussion on immigration in southwestern Ohio. We want the discussion of these principles to raise the level of civility and respect for diversity and inclusion of immigrants in our community. And this is what such a discussion should strive to accomplish. So we'll begin. I'll introduce our executive director, the MARC executive director, Margaret Fox, and she'll read the principles to guide Ohio's discussion of immigration.
Thank you. A declaration of principles to guide Ohio's immigration discussion. 5 areas. First, federal government. We are a United States of America made up of immigrants from around the world. A pluribus unum, which means out of many one, is a dictum on the seal of the United States and adopted by an act of Congress. Immigration policy is the responsibility of the federal government. We urge local, regional, and state governments to insist the federal government fulfill its responsibilities. We urge passage of a fair and equitable immigration policy applied consistently throughout the United States while protecting its borders. Law enforcement. We respect the rule of law and law enforcement's professional judgment. Using local law enforcement to apply immigration policy increases the cost of local policing and opens the door further to racial profiling, which is contrary to public safety. Families. One of the tenets of a thriving community is healthy families. We stand with families in opposition to any program or policy that would disrupt or unnecessarily separate them. We call for policies that unify and support the health and well-being of children and families regardless of their status. Our economy. Ohio is best served by a growing economy that supports its schools, health and welfare services, local governments, and innovative spirit. We respect the economic contributions immigrants make as workers and taxpayers to build this economy. Ohio needs to acknowledge the value of policies that support businesses and legitimize the monetary contributions made by immigrants. A free society. Immigrants are members of communities throughout Ohio. We are a nation that consistently offers opportunities through innovation brought about by inclusive policies and encourage immigrants to stay. Ohio needs to reflect the principles of a free society by establishing policies that welcome and support immigrants.
Thank you, Margaret. Now, we've asked several of our judicatory leaders to, if they would care to, and several of them are going to do that, to read statements in support of MARC's principles that might reflect their particular judicatory's emphasis on the issue of immigration. So first off, I'll call on the Most Reverend Dennis Schnurr, Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Cincinnati.
Thank you. I'm pleased to join with the other faith leaders within the Metropolitan Area Religious Coalition of Cincinnati to publicly announce our shared principles to guide Ohio's conversation on immigration. In a statement that I made for Catholics in the Archdiocese last summer on this topic, I affirmed the indispensable rule of law. Justice, order, and the common good for all of us can only be made possible through laws and our expectation to obey them. At the same time, I reiterated the Catholic Church's insistence on reforming the federal laws that regulate migration in our country. As a result of Congress's failure to fix the system, our Catholic parishes, schools, hospitals, and social service agencies are witnessing devastating consequences. We have dealt with undocumented parents who, after being cited by some local officials for minor infractions of the law, have been torn from their families and deported to countries where their children cannot follow. Just recently, one of our priests reported to us that an immigrant mother who was overdue on paying a traffic ticket was turned over to immigration authorities and detained for a couple of days, during which time the baby that she was nursing tragically ended up in the emergency room. All too regularly, we hear of immigrants being taken advantage of by unscrupulous employers who exploit immigrants' fear of deportation to deny them of their wages or fire them once injured on the job. Our agencies have also received calls from victims of hedonist crimes, including battered mothers, who refrain from reporting abuses to local law enforcement for fear of being permanently separated from their families. Regardless of whether or not these human beings carry the right documents, we all deserve to look to law enforcement agencies for protection and safety without this kind of dread. Lastly, I want to take this opportunity to applaud all our brave local law enforcement officers who proactively work to build bridges of trust in our immigrant communities. They are the ones on the front lines who choose not to instill fear, but to forge a positive relationship with immigrants and win their cooperation in solving real crimes. Their valiant efforts exemplify how state and local public officials can best keep all of us safer as we all continue to wait for a comprehensive federal immigration reform. Thank you.
Next, I'll call on the Very Reverend Ron Delvain. He's the interim dean at Christ Church Cathedral. He's representing the Right Reverend Thomas Breidenthal, who's the Bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Southern Ohio. Bishop Breidenthal is out of the country.
It's an honor to be able to speak for our bishop and for the National Episcopal Church as well here. The bishop writes, I give thanks to my brothers and sisters of faith for their witness and commitment to respecting the dignity of every human being. I fully support the principles developed by Mark as a moral guide to our discussion about the difficult and complex issues surrounding immigration. Both the Diocese of Southern Ohio and the wider Episcopal Church have called for comprehensive immigration reform at the federal level. We urge the federal government to set just, fair, and equitable immigration policy, while state and local governments should focus on providing services and support for all people. In a letter to the church last year, the House of Bishops encouraged Episcopalians to continue to offer material and spiritual support for undocumented workers and their families as a matter of respecting basic human dignity. As people of faith, we must examine how we offer immigrants welcome, protection, and help. We must ask, how can we be a part of their integration into American life instead of their alienation? As a judicatory member of Mark, I am pleased to support these guiding principles, which offer a starting point and foundation for respectful discussion about an issue that affects our state and our nation.
Next, we'll hear from the Reverend Sharon Detlar. She's representing M.J. Pearson, who is president of the Unitarian Universalist Council of Greater Cincinnati.